welcome to the first episode of AWS Presents Media Moguls on the Business World platforms. On behalf of the Business World family, I welcome all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few days, we will be going through various aspects of media and technology. Today is the first fireside chat. And to be very honest with all of you, ladies and gentlemen, when I was given the privilege to moderate this fireside chat with Neeraj, of course, I was thinking of presenting to all of you a very flashy opening statement, which is supposed to be pertinent at forums like these, where we have media entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, and hence a very sophisticated and a mogulized discussion, which speaks the right jargons and lets the audience know that we mean business here at this summit. But then I thought, why to jargonize the truth? And the truth in this context, ladies and gentlemen, is not a facade or a manufactured demand. Let me be very honest. It doesn't need to be jargonized for validation. So here is the truth. India and the world has changed more in the last 30 years than it did in the last 150. Ladies and gentlemen, I remember my childhood days of watching Shaktiman on Doordarshan in the mid-90s. When cable TV was not an every household affair. When we had to interact and talk with our friends, we had to go out and meet them physically. Had to go to the local kirana or sabzi mandi to buy things we need. Home delivery at that time was a relationship-driven model and was not an incentive to be taxed later. Internet had just come up and setting up a Hotmail was considered to be a privilege. And my father's study room and the local municipality office was the biggest data center of cloud storage I knew. But let me tell you that my father's Hotmail had nothing to do with the Kirana store orders. More so, I could not buy a pair of jeans while talking to my friends and playing Jagga jerseys. Media and interactive technologies were two different universes. And here I am sitting in towards the end of 2021, watching Amazon Prime in the palm of my hand, ordering groceries from the screen on Daily Basket, food on Zomato, knowing about a friend's update on Instagram, tagging an activist on Twitter, listening to his arguments on Clubhouse, listening to music on Hangama Play, finding a friend's birthday on Facebook, and gifting him his I Love Donald Trump t-shirt about whom I surfaced latest news on the BBC app. All in just one device, my phone. And yes, I did not mention Amazon Pay because the word pay has excited technology and media providers, but customers have been slow adopters of this word, not technology in today's times. And to an extent, it's not their fault. Ladies and gentlemen, the gig economy has its own merits and demerits. At times when media and tech, being two different universes and multiple destinations, have now become synonymous with each other. Each took a lot of time and effort to get masses on board and adopt new technologies, culture, and a way of life. The cost of which was instant monetization. It has been replaced by customer acquisition cost. When so many options are on the plate at such competitive prices, volumes of people coming on board takes a priority over the value of money they are willing to pay. Betting on future is not just confined to equities and stocks now. In a price-sensitive market like India, monetization is something which keeps some media and tech CEOs awake in the night. We have one such founder and CEO, the managing director of Hangama Digital Media Entertainment, Mr. Neeraj Roy. Neeraj, namaskar, good afternoon. How are you? I'm sorry for the long introduction, but I had to set the context right.
Namaskar, Abhinav, and a very, very warm welcome. Good afternoon to all your people who've logged in. Wonderful to be here on your panel. Yeah.
Thank you, Neeraj. So Neeraj, I'll start with one basic question. You have been one of the early pioneers of digital media entertainment in this industry, digital media person. How has been your monetization journey so far? What were the hurdles and challenges you came across?
Sure. So I think, Abhinav, you set the context very well. You've also very slyly, by a reference to Shaktiman as opposed to watching Ramayana or Mahabharat, you've kind of set the bar with regard to one generation gap there itself. Yeah. But jokes apart, I think we've witnessed over the last 1.5 decades, three sort of, distinct churns, and they've all been linked to generational changes as far as core networks are concerned.
Sure.
So from early days of an edge to an early 3G network, which was principally a, audio-driven ecosystem, to obviously enough has been said about what happened in India from 2016 onwards and the 4G revolution, the movement from 1 gig to 16, 18 gigs per consumer data economy and what it did to video. And I think the last 18 months, which has led to digital acceleration between 2 and 10 years, dependent on what industry you are in, wherein the media and entertainment industry has also been a massive beneficiary. And one of the biggest two categories to gain out there have been the broader OTT ecosystem from a video perspective, because what it's done is it's brought consumption from personal devices to OTT shows being brought into living rooms of people, conversations that are happening around that. And obviously the second component has been gaming. To your question on monetization, Hungama as a company has been perhaps obsessed with monetization from its early days itself. First phase of monetization happened through the broader telecom ecosystem, which was also called the value-added services. And I think the last 4 or 5 years, as the OTT ecosystem has emerged, there are almost 5-6 different forms of monetization, which are driven a lot by the evolution of fintech that's happened. Second, monetization has been on the back of layering product offering with gamification. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But at this point in time in India, as we speak, the two principal components are transaction/subscription, the second being ad funded. Unfortunately, a lot of digital media businesses in India went down the path of relying too heavily on ad funded as an ecosystem and not so much on the subscription economy. A classic example, we are here with your partners as AWS, who've been partners with us as well for a very long time. They have really the subscription ecosystem. They've been one of the pioneers in that when you look at one of their sister companies, which is Prime, in what it did to commerce and subsequently took that entire proposition onto digital video consumption as well. So I think, and what holds for us the next 3-4 years will be a couple more new avenues of monetization, which I'll be happy to talk about.
Sure. Now, talking about new avenues of monetization, Neeraj, what happens in a market like India? There's a lot of Me Too replication of one player does it, so we will do it as well. Because it succeeded in the West, so will it in our case. But do you think when it comes to the Indian context, we need to expand our offerings beyond just content? Because I was discussing this with a few of our colleagues. If tomorrow Facebook, and I remember we have discussed this online as well with you personally, Neeraj, if tomorrow Facebook comes up with its own OTT, Facebook starts making its own original content, there is a proposition that you're there on Facebook for social media, you're there on Facebook for social e-commerce, you're there on Facebook for watching content as well. So do you think content players per se, if a player like Facebook can expand from social media to content, do content players need to look at offerings beyond content, maybe social media, maybe something else?
The short answer is not necessarily. But let me, for the benefit of those who've logged in, just try and paint a picture. Let's say the next 3-4 years.
Sure.
India is now at the cusp of a next generational change as far as networks are concerned, right? Over the next, say, 12, 18 months or so, there will be a transition from 4G into, say, 5G.
Correct.
Now, what that leads to is a very fascinating opportunity as far as media entertainment is concerned. Today, we consume media entertainment in 5 different formats, okay? The most basic being, text. It then goes into audio. and you referenced audio can be, music consumption. It can be the entire space of podcasts. You spoke about, opportunities like Clubhouse, etc. It goes into video, which started off with just aggregating. Within that itself, you have, UGC, you have now professionally generated content, and you will have the whole avenue of live as a category and its potential for monetization. From there, it goes into more immersive form like gaming. And the fifth really is an evolution which is more for a 5G ecosystem, whereby virtual reality, more immersive mixed reality experiences get created. Now, what 5G also does, Abhinav, is it lays the foundation for what we are calling the spatial web. The spatial web is essentially a scenario where you will seamlessly move in and out of any form. Today, if I want to, in your device, you want to read something, you can read it as a text message in one of your, either the messaging app or WhatsApp or anything, or you can read it in a richer form like a PDF. If you wanted audio, you can get it in different forms. You want video, a video player within the device needs to trigger that video, and then you'll be able to watch the video. But in a spatial web ecosystem, a consumer moves from audio to video to gaming to immersive form quite seamlessly. And that is transformative when it comes to the broader opportunities for the media entertainment industry. And I don't believe enough companies are necessarily looking at it like that. They've gotten too caught up in just looking at things in silos. I am an OTT company. OTT is, it's essentially anything can be OTT as opposed to it being in a sort of walled garden ecosystem. But the service you bring into it is what makes the difference. And to that extent, I think the generation shift that's happening by technology is what will perhaps create opportunities for more cohesive kind of entertainment. Today, when you speak to a 15-year-old who's not reading a newspaper, who's not watching television, and is perhaps spending a disproportionate time, and time is the single measure of all media businesses, right? Onto gaming, they're spending a disproportionate time in gaming, for instance. That to them is entertainment consumption that's happening. Now, in that world, if I start bringing in more interesting avenues, such as the world of NFTs, for example, which then unlocks. Now, each of these elements become new avenues for monetization for us. I feel the next 2 years, 3 years will see from transaction and advertising to potentially a higher growth of social commerce. Why? Because the player itself is going to evolve. The player is the new real estate. When you look around and you ask yourself, why are e-commerce companies getting into, film production, for instance? Easy answer is, okay, it's customer acquisition. But a slightly more forward-looking thought process on that is because of the evolution of the player, the kind of interaction that will happen as far as the player, which will lead to commerce. And that changes the mindset. That also changes how media companies are looked at. Today, globally, in an 85 trillion economy, media businesses will be, worth a couple of $1 trillion. But if you start from just time consumption to commerce, you suddenly have the potential of being a part of the broader, the full 85 trillion economy. And that's the world which we are heading towards.
Neeraj, you spoke about various spectrums which are associated with a core media, like media and tech have become synonymous with each other. For example, Clubhouse, apart from developing UGC, is now bringing chefs on board where they can have their own, sessions of your own cooking sessions where you can teach people. You can start taking masterclass on Clubhouse. So these are various spectrums you were talking about, and you rightly mentioned about gaming. But you also raised a very important point. Very few companies are looking. They are in that direction. They're mostly operating in their walled gardens. In a market like India, what do you think are the reasons why companies can't look beyond walled gardens? What is stopping them from taking that approach route?
Well, it's a couple of reasons. I think the first is the sheer pace of change. it was coming, and a lot of companies were not necessarily prepared, but when it did come, and you suddenly had consumption jump from 850, 900 MB to, like almost within 6 months, jump to 10 gigs of consumption. Now, when you're consuming 10 gigs, you are bound to be spending that, because you can't do that much of time in terms of video calling. Whatever amount of consumption that you will do for all your other elements, whether it's mobility, it's fintech, banking, etc., it's commerce. The big bulk of that consumption was happening on the back of video and gaming related, and that changes habit, and that habit change is being witnessed. The second thing that happened was, unfortunately, the pandemic has been very severe and harsh on a few media sectors, right? If you relate the first couple of months of last year's lockdown, medium like print, medium like radio pretty much fell off the cliff, right, Abhinav?
Correct.
India is a very vibrant market for that, because we speak so many different languages. The whole theme of what we call as vernacular or regional is actually mainstream in so many different places. And therefore, it's a large market. We have 900 odd TV stations, thousands of publications, about 300-400 radio networks. And all of these were principally relying on what? Relying 90+% on advertising. And when advertising took a hit and moved more towards digital, because that's the world that we were, the whole world was kind of accelerated towards, right?
Correct.
Unfortunately, some of the companies there were not necessarily as prepared, okay? And that has led to new forms. Now, even if in video, if I were to talk about just the evolution of the short form as a category, right? The entire evolution of companies like TikTok globally, and what it did with the ban in this market, to a burst of companies coming into that entire space.
To fill the void.
Format. You see, it's really the format, the fact that that kind of snacking format with its intelligence of AI and ML and vast amount of content, which was getting far better curated and served, leading to higher time consumption. So it disrupted even digital forms. Like YouTube was seen as, Kalka technology versus something like this. So I think those have been reasons. And in this, the Indian market, I also believe bundling in the Indian market has been a double-edged sword. Whilst bundling largely with telecom companies, etc., has fueled growth, but it's high time that telecom companies don't sort of fire this on the shoulders of content companies.
I'm glad you got that. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah. So there are good signs. I think in the last 12, 18 months, I believe there has been almost a 8x growth as far as, if you see the numbers that are there now, close to about 60 million subscribers that are there as far as video consumption is concerned and subscriptions. And I feel the next 3-4 years will see a market of about 600 million consumers who will earmark about 100 rupees a month. And that 100 rupees a month will be broken into 4-5 services. So you could be earmarking $20 to something, $40 to something. It may happen on the back of a sporting activity, or consumers may go in and out of services. And India has 20-25 active services that are there, and there'll be more which will emerge if you start adding elements like gaming, etc. So that kind of a size at 600 million consumers is about a 90,000 crore potential market. It may seem large now, but that's the size of the television market right now, right?
Correct.
It's very, very viable. And when you start adding commerce to it, then it gets into a very interesting territory.
Neeraj, I'm glad you brought the telco point up. Before moving to social commerce, when Sam Pitroda started the telecom revolution and what they did to the landline, many people opine that the tech companies are doing to the telco players what telcos did to the landlines. Telco revenues have been dwindling over the past few years. Even after the entry of Jio, there have been the revenue and the bottom line of most of the telcos are dwindling. Now, how do you see this equation changing going forward between the vendors and the telcos? So, especially monetization from that angle.
Yes. So the Indian context is a little unique because of certain regulatory challenges that have happened. Okay. So we went from say 3-4 to almost 14 telecom companies, and now technically it's a 3+1 situation. And thankfully the actions of the government, which have indeed been very, very far-sighted. They have been inclusive. They've been supportive of customer needs because telecom companies have really played no lesser a role than any of the frontline workers in terms of, during the pandemic when everything shifted, right? Consumption shifted from urban to rural. It shifted from office to home. They stood up to that and really made India deliver on every front. I believe the last few years, the pricing of telecom companies has been artificially suppressed. I mean, when you look at it,
we also have the least data cost across the world.
Yeah, 4 years back, customer was paying about 200 rupees for a gig of data, 250 rupees. Today, for 150 rupees, you get 30 gigs of data. Okay. Now that the regulatory environment and the government has come forward and made their plans clear, I believe this ecosystem will strengthen, and it is required because the telecom ecosystem and for the broader growth of digital India, which spans everything. It's not just about media tech. Telecom ecosystem is very, very crucial because that is going to commit 40,000-50,000 crores on an annualized basis to do this. Every time a new evolution happens, of a new technology 4-5 years, that's the kind of investment that is bare minimum that's required. So I feel that you are likely to witness improvement in ARPUs from 150 levels to potentially 250 to 300.
You think so? You think?
Yes, I do think so. And I also believe that would be fair for even for the consumers today have the capacity to doing that, and they will get services as well, which cater to things. So, and I believe a part of that is likely to one of the beneficiaries of that will be the media entertainment industry. And that's why I'm saying, I mean, you can hold me to this. We can have this discussion same day in 2025. And if 600 million consumers are not there in a subscription plan across the country, I'll be very surprised.
Well, we can have a separate panel discussion with Neeraj on ARPU. Not in 2025, Neeraj, मैं अगले साल ही आपको बुला लूँगा. But देखते हैं वो कहाँ तक जाता. Now, talking about the social commerce equation of things, Neeraj, interactive screening, alternate endings, customized endings.
Yes.
Social commerce, like we have spoken in the past. These aspects of technology, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, they have suddenly exacerbated in the last 3 years, if I so to speak. And COVID has only multiplied that. Where do you see that role of technology in social commerce going? And I'll bring Shweta in just after this question.
Sure.
So where do you see this going?
Abhinav, it's very important that you highlight where is technology in this, because that is one of the single biggest enablers of what will happen. So what it's done is, see, India is a very diverse market, right? Even in a best case scenario, there's barely 16% of our retail trade, which is what you will term as in the organized sector. Okay. The rest of it is largely in an unorganized manner. That's why companies like Unilever, etc., still rely on 3-4 million retailers who reach their products across to now
the grassroots.
That's right. So what a big catalyst the last 18 months has been, because of conditions prevailing the way they were. People still require their essentials. The ability to experiment with digital has been almost like it's become, a component of, you don't have a choice for it, as it were. And there has been a democratization of providing quality products to consumers. And with our own innovation of delivery, cash on delivery, etc., you are finding this grow. Now, what social commerce has done is a lot of places. See, when you look at India, is really three different. You've got top of the pyramid, which is rest of, any kind of high net worth anywhere in the world. Then you've got a mass 200.
It's a combination of many markets within itself.
And then the third category is really where social commerce is getting triggered. We've seen this explosive growth in China, for example. That's where platforms like Kuaishou, platforms of TikTok, etc., which came around. And they moved from 1 billion to closer to almost 80, 90 billion over 2 years. Now, I don't believe that that's the kind of surge that we are likely to witness, but the format of video, its ability to converse and bring around, almost equivalent to, a homemaker going and having their negotiation that they would do in their kirana shop, being able to do that. And the aspect that technology is facilitating that. And in this, there are three key things. There is machine learning. There is the entire aspect of curating content and meaning, in this case, products, and putting it forward in front of them. There is the use of video. And then there is, this entire element of group and group buying and the power of that's there.
Correct.
And finally, the democratization by product in terms of the platforms are universal and reaching across. And UPI cannot be, we cannot say enough for the innovation of UPI coming out of India. UPI has been one of the biggest innovation.
Game changer.
Which is really brought so much to customers across different categories. So I think that's what's led to it. Yeah.
That is going to be a game changer. And talking about technology, ladies and gentlemen, technology can be an enabler, not only in acquiring new customers, but also monetization. And like we discussed earlier, monetization is something which keeps most of the CEOs awake in the night. I welcome Shweta Jain, who is the head of Asia Pacific Business and Development on the Media and Entertainment Front from AWS. Shweta, how can technology be an enabler as far as monetization is concerned? And you understand this space better than anybody else. How can technology be an enabler? And I know we have had these discussions offline as well, but can you explain how technology, and especially a cloud servicing like Amazon, could be an enabler when it comes to monetization?
Yeah, hi Abhinav, and hi Neeraj. Really appreciate the opportunity to join the conversation, and I've been listening, and thanks for sharing all those insights, Neeraj. Very insightful and very useful, and thank you for candidly also calling out, the challenges that all the OTT platforms face when it comes to monetization, and specifically in India.
But you will hardly find Neeraj Roy not being candid. He's one of the most frank people I know.
True. That's his middle name, right? Awesome.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And, Abhinav, you mentioned, I have the privilege of working alongside so many media customers in the region. And of course, Hungama is one of them. And we constantly learn from our customers, and been amazing partnership, all these years with Hungama. So based on the conversations that we are having with our media customers, specifically OTT customers, I can see that there's always been an inherent tension, between the need to deliver a premium viewing experience for the users, and also at the same time be able to monetize the video offerings, right? And it's always a very fine balance. And like you folks have been discussing, it's absolutely true that advertisements, and unfortunately true as well to some extent, that advertisements continue to be the main source of revenue for most OTT platforms today. And what I will do is, without going too much into the technology, I want to talk about 3 specific monetization challenges for advertisements that our customers have been sharing with us over the years, and how we have been at AWS, we've been trying to support them in meeting some of these, addressing some of these challenges, right?
Sure.
So the first one is that ads can be blocked using ad blockers, right? So one is that. The second is content providers are always looking for technology, to automate how they can serve personalized or targeted ads to consumers at scale. And the third challenge that we are getting a lot recently is how content owners who've got a lot of legacy content over the years and have been able to create a lot of, what I also call gold mine, right? For them, how do they leverage technology to monetize all that legacy content and all the content assets that they have, right? So now I'll talk about how AWS is helping on those three challenges, right? So first two problems, the ad blockers and serving personalized ads at scale, we have a service called AWS Elemental Media Tailor, which is our server-side ad insertion service, which basically stitches the ad as part of the content on the server side, so it cannot be blocked by ad blockers. And also be able to serve personalized advertisements at scale using this technology. And it is in fact a fully managed service from AWS. So there is absolutely no heavy lifting that is required on part of the platforms. And then for the third challenge on how to monetize your content assets, this is a new innovation, in fact, new feature that we announced in March 2021. Is what we call a channel assembly functionality within the AWS Media Tailor service.
Okay.
So in a common man's language, this is a simply VOD to live service. So which means that using this functionality, video platforms can create linear OTT channels using existing video content and be able to monetize by serving personalized advertisements at scale, right? All this without incurring any huge expense or getting into the complexity of launching live channels. In fact, it can start as low as $120 a month per channel, right? So that's the minimum cost you pay if nobody is viewing your channel. And as more and more viewers start viewing your channel, your bill on the cloud also goes up. But it's basically you pay for only for what you use, right? So that is really the core value proposition of the cloud, right? And you're able to seamlessly stitch the advertisements as part of the content and of course tailor it to the individual viewers, which in turn leads to maximizing your ad revenue, because you'll be able to command better CPM rates for more targeted ads. So I want to give you an example of a customer here, right? So there's this company called Seven West Media in Australia, which is in fact one of the largest media companies in Australia. And they are they started using this feature called channel assembly from AWS Elemental sometime around 6 months ago. And they in fact, what they did is they took last 3 seasons of Big Brother videos and created a channel out of it, right? And they in fact, when they launched this channel, it very quickly became the most popular channel that they had on their OTT platform, and saw 47% increase in the viewership versus their last season of Big Brother. So we are talking about like big impact on, the viewership, engagement, and accordingly, of course, the ad revenues also go up, right? And during the Tokyo Olympics, again, they created dedicated swimming channel for Australian viewers. They also created a channel dedicated to, how the Australian teams are performing at the Olympics in Tokyo. And also some other channels dedicated to specific sports. So with this new ability to be able to, test a target segment, a customer segment with really very, very low, in fact, close to zero investment. For content platforms, I believe that this really opens up many new possibilities and also avenues for monetization. So I thought I'll talk about this new feature. Of course, there are tons of other things I could go on and on, but I would like to end here and give an opportunity to you folks to carry on the conversation.
Sure. Thank you, Shweta. 47% increase year on year in membership of viewers is big. Neeraj, now Shweta gave this example from Australia. There are other markets. In fact, you have also ventured into other markets. How do you compare the Indian market going forward? Like you said, we have our own set of challenges as far as adoption of technology is concerned and monetization of this, dynamic convergence of media and tech is concerned. Where do you see the Indian market going forward in the next 5 years?
Sure. So, firstly, I want to reiterate for the benefit of your viewers. I think what Shweta has spoken about on the new features that they are referencing, particularly in context to live. See, you must understand that live as a category itself is a very high growth opportunity. Correct. And the ability with live, if you have access to being able to launch channels at such low costs, what is happening, we are already witnessing, even with these large, say, short video platforms, etc. as well, influencers with large followings then go back and say, okay, I've given you a 30-second, 60-second, you've liked this, whatever it may be. It may be a do-it-yourself, it may be a dance thing, whatever, it may be some cooking related. Then they are going around and actually creating opportunities like, okay, I'm doing a session for 1 hour. Out of this 600,000 consumers of mine, are 500 of them keen to sign up and pay 100 rupees for a greater amount of interaction. So that live is leading into monetization avenues. And I think, it's extremely important that companies like AWS are at the forefront of enabling that. So coming to your question on the India opportunity. I think I'm supremely confident on India. And I think the last few days, in the Indian context, you must understand that the telecom ecosystem will always play a very crucial role because it is playing a dual role. We were not a market which had, broad Wi-Fi connectivity, etc., broader broadband. Therefore, it is the telecom ecosystem which has literally taken up that. So that's why consumption is happening. The challenge was that ecosystem was distressed and was not being able to make investments at pace with what consumption, because we're going to go from all of this. There is evolution on even the formats that's happening, 4K, 8K, you go to newer forms. These are all very high data consuming, formats. So that now having been addressed, I believe there will be strength over there that will happen. And I believe that there has been enough sort of disruption within broader media itself. I see, huge amount of consolidation that is likely to happen within media in this entire, and the desire to look at monetization, which goes beyond advertising into subscriptions, into commerce, into areas, is something where I see media companies leveraging their communities in that area. And that's the kind of, as far as, international is concerned, we've always had a focus. We are live now in 49 countries. That's driven on the back of the fact that, Indian content is viewed in today 127 countries, dubbed in 35 languages. So we've gone about building these communities, and it kind of worked very well over the last 4-5 years when the domestic market was at on battleground, as it were. But I see, our focus coming back into India in a big way the next few years. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Neeraj. And ladies and gentlemen, we hope the next year we are not discussing the same set of problems we have discussed this year. We emerge, we evolve to new problems. And I hope that Shweta, sitting here in India, I think you're live from Singapore, right, Shweta?
Yes, Singapore.
So Shweta gave an Australian example in India. She gives an Indian example next year in any part of the globe. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you, Neeraj, so much for your time. This was really insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to the next session of Media Moguls. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.